Marvel, DC, or otherwise, it's fair to say that comic book movies have had a hard time adapting costumes to the big screen. I mean, just take a look at Crash Test Dummy Doom from Fantastic and Recoil in horror. It's tacky, and I hate it. The point is that nobody's perfect, and Marvel have also managed to produce a number of duds in this department. Several of the MCU's costumes have either not done the comics justice, been executed poorly, felt lacking for story reasons, or worse, just looked plain bad. Sure, not every character can dazzle us in the same way. Well, Dazzler can, but there are a few recurring characters in the MCU who need arresting by the fashion police. So, I'm Yoon from What Culture, and here are 7 MCU costumes that need to change. Number 7, the Nova Corps. The Nova Corps were first introduced in Guardians of the Galaxy, essentially the space police whose job it was to protect the planet Xandar from threats both local and interstellar. Their look was a more grounded version of the costumes worn by the Nova Corps in the comics. Colours were more muted and the helmets were less showy. Functional, but not very inspired, perhaps in an attempt to preempt comparisons to the Green Lantern Corps of the DC Universe, who the Nova Corps are kind of based on. Why do the costumes need to change? Well, in a franchise like Guardians, where everything is bright and kooky, with weird-looking aliens, talking trees, intelligent raccoons, and a planet built out of the head of, you know, a freaking celestial, it's a bit disappointing how dull and blue the Nova Corps outfit looks on the big screen. This is even more disappointing when you see how awesome the initial concept art for the Nova Corps actually was. These costumes look distinct and absolutely badass, not just like someone copied and pasted the comic book version and lowered the saturation. On the plus side, now that Xandar has been decimated by Thanos in Infinity War, albeit off-screen, now would be the perfect time to give the Corps a redesign and bring in Richard Rider. Number 6, Iron Man. Iron Man's look has remained pretty consistent since his first ever appearance, with the iconic red and gold colour scheme being a mainstay of each different outfit, besides a brief change in Iron Man 2's suitcase suit, which was, yes, the best thing ever. His Infinity War garb followed suit, but the technology on display was far more advanced than anything we'd seen in the MCU before. That's fine, really, but the fact remains we're yet to see a costume that truly harkens back to the old suits spotlighted in the character's earliest comics. And hey, if Spider-Man Far From Home can pay homage to the old Ditko eyes and its darker colour palette from his earliest adventures, who's to say the same approach won't work for Tony Stark? We've already seen some concept art for Avengers 4 ostensibly showcasing a new look for Tony, one that features gold way more prominently in a similar way to the character's first red and gold armor from the comics. Number 5, Hawkeye. Right, I know, you see Hawkeye and laugh, right? Well, the joke's on you, pal, because yes, Hawkeye does have fans, or I'm sure they do. There are definitely others like me out there, and they take huge grievance with how he's been depicted in the MCU. Yeah, all of us, all 3 of them, maybe more. For the most part, the MCU has taken inspiration from Marvel's Ultimate line of comics, and again, that's fine, but it's not exactly iconic by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, say what you will about purple-hatted Hawkeye, but at least it's a look. Why does the costume need to change? Well, Hawkeye never has been the most popular Avenger, and he'll probably never even make the top 4 or 5. The lack of an iconic, distinguishable costume doesn't help his appeal, since those bland dark clothes just make him look like a regular grunt, rather than as a member of the Avengers proper. The designers have added dashes of purple here and there, but off the top of your head, it's hard to remember which movies and which costumes had purple and which didn't. They all just blur together into one giant boring blob of material. Now yes, Hawkeye is technically just a skilled agent, so he doesn't need something colourful and extravagant like his superhero colleagues. But just look at the pages of Marvel Comics to see how memorable his attire can be. Again, he'll be suiting up as Ronin in Avengers 4, but once Barton goes back to his old persona, he could do with a decent splash of purple to make things look good. Number 4, the Hulkbuster. The Hulkbuster was first used by Tony Stark in Avengers Age of Ultron, where he attempted to incapacitate an angrier than usual Hulk. Built for this sole purpose, it's the largest suit in Tony's arsenal in terms of pure bulk, height, and width. Ironically, it was most recently worn by Bruce Banner in Avengers Infinity War, who, considering that the Hulk wouldn't emerge, needed some firepower of his own. But why does the costume need a change? Well, there aren't exactly any issues with the way the Hulkbuster looks or performs. Its colours are great. It's actually the way that the concept of the suit is executed on film, and more specifically, the way its helmetless CGI looked in a number of scenes in Infinity War. Those who saw the film probably noticed this already, but there's one shot near the end, after Thanos' snap, when the remaining heroes are stood around looking completely dejected, where Bruce's head can be seen sticking out of the Hulkbuster, and it looks absolutely atrocious. It's meant to be an emotional moment, but that disembodied head floating above what is quite clearly a CGI carcass takes you right out of it. On the other hand, if this is something that the studio is going to continue to struggle with, then just leave the Hulkbuster helmet on when possible. Number 3. Scarlet Witch. Like Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch has never really had a quote-unquote costume, more just a series of slightly different red and black clothes. In Avengers Infinity War, she sported a long red leather jacket, which was her coolest look to date, but it's still not up to par with most of the other Avengers. So, why does the costume have to change? Well, at the moment, Wanda is sort of another Hawkeye. There's a lack of a definitive iconic costume for Scarlet Witch, which is hurting her appeal as a character. And by the time her own show comes around on Disney+, she could do with a new look. Even Elizabeth Olsen herself hates it. Her chosen garb also doesn't make any sense at a story level. Wanda is one of the central Avengers, and with her own home at Avengers HQ, it means that she'll always be one of the first members to be called upon for any mission, presuming that she returns in Endgame. That's a lot of danger for someone to be in on a regular basis, so why is she struggling into battle wearing a corset and not something just a tad more practical? Number 2. War Machine. War Machine has sported that same silver-grey hunk of metal since Iron Man 2, barring a brief change into the more colourful Iron Patriots during Iron Man 3. It's serviceable, but you'd think Tony would have lent a hand and upgraded Rhodey's suit by now. You know, maybe add a 56th gun to his arm or something, or maybe an air pump for when the Avengers inevitably want to have a kickabout at their weekly five-a-side tournament. The issues with his War Machine armor can be found at a story level. More specifically, the fact that Rhodey has been stuck with basically the same outfit for the past 8 years, while Tony himself has been designing more powerful, more advanced suits, and for other characters like Spider-Man 2, well, it doesn't make any sense when you think about it. Tony built an amazingly sophisticated piece of kit with the Mark L Iron Man armor, as well as the Iron Spider suit with its nanotech deployment capability and 4 additional Spidey legs. But Rhodey's suit just has a couple of guns and bomb dispensers. Not exactly hitting it with the big leagues. Number 1. Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, so first things first. There's no underestimating just how influential James Gunn's Guardians films have been on that corner of the Marvel Universe. Characters have changed, and so too have their looks. Only not for the better. While no one was asking to see Yondu in his OG outfit, glorious though it may have been, there is something about the leather burgundy outfits that screams early 2000s superhero fare. Like, yeah, we're aware of the old look and we're inherently silly, but those costumes? Nah, don't fancy them. It's just a tad jarring, especially since Star-Lord himself, Chris Pratt, scarcely uses the mask anymore. Factor that in with the amazing concept art for Guardians that sported something of a sci-fi, western, steampunk-esque thing, and it's clear that the Guardians' respective looks aren't exactly all that interesting. Look, the closest comparison I can make is that they kind of look like the outfits from the early 2000s X-Men films. Yes, they're serviceable, and the presence of a uniform works somewhat, but they're way too muted compared to their surroundings. You know, maybe add a bit of blue in there, a splash of white, and maybe, gasp, get rid of a leather jacket or two. It would make a world of difference, and even though we're probably going to have to wait yonks for Guardians 3 to come around, there's no time like the present to get cracking on with a whole new look.